You can't see it, and we really don't have words for it, but the spiritual tectonic plates of our lives are shifting right now. And it's going to change the course of our lives as well as generations to come. Hi, I'm Laura Kusto, and this is the Moon Method. Now, normally I take the current moon phase each week and I break it down into a relatable problem that we're all facing and give you an actionable framework that you can use to work with the energies at play that week in your daily lives and be more conscious and spiritually aware. However, today we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to talk about the three outer planets in our solar system: Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. These three planets are known as the transpersonal planets, and they are in a rare alignment from 2025 through 2027. Now, what do I mean by that? Here's the deal. We've got to start with maybe what we're most familiar with. And if you're here, you're aware of the moon. And I talk about how it's our closest celestial neighbor and it moves the most in the sky relative to us. So it has the most to say. Well, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are the polar opposite. They're at the very far end of the solar system. They move the slowest. That doesn't mean they don't have a lot to say, however, but they don't change positions all that often. And so for them to be in alignment is saying something. It's rare. The fact also that they are in what we call a harmonious alignment is even more rare. In fact, astrologers have been talking about this for a few years now, some of them going back in looking, when's the last time we saw this? And really no one can pinpoint it. There have been times where two of these planets have been in harmonious angles, but to have all three, again, super, super rare. And so, well, what does this mean? And why are we talking about it today? Well, again, we're going to have this alignment for about 3 years. And that's what's cool about the outer planets moving so slowly. When they do come into alignment, it lasts for quite a while. And now this alignment is going to have some peaks and valleys. We had the first peak in September, actually end of August, early September of 2025. And then we're going to see another one coming in later in 2026, and then the final one in 2027. All right, so what do I mean when I say coming into alignment? What does that look like? All right, I am going to pull up the chart here and I'm going to show you exactly what we mean. Okay, so here we have a visual of what this looks like up in the sky. And what we're looking at here is this blue triangle over here on the left, the big, bold blue lines. Okay, there's some other blue lines, but they're not as big and they're not as bold. This is the configuration up in the sky near the end of August 2025. And what we have right here is Pluto. That's the planet Pluto at 1 degrees, 54 minutes of Aquarius. The next point in the triangle right here, we have Neptune and also the planet Saturn quite close to it. Neptune, though, at 1 degree and 32 minutes. Saturn is playing a little bit of a minor role in this in the beginning. We might touch on that a little bit. But then Neptune here is the one that we really do want to focus in on. It's going to be present throughout the duration of this configuration. And it is also one of the outer planets. Saturn is the next most inner planet from Uranus. So it goes Saturn, then Uranus, which is down here, Neptune and Pluto. That's the order that they go in. But Uranus right over here is forming that third point of the triangle. And Uranus is at 1 degrees, 23 minutes of Gemini. And so this is the configuration. These three planets, Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini, they are going to be staying in this configuration on and off through mid-2027. And again, they'll have peaks and valleys. They will come into more of an exact alignment like they are here on the screen, where they're all at about 1 degree of that sign, and then they'll come out of it a little bit. Like one of the planets will be at say 2 or 3 degrees, while the others will stay closer to 1, and they'll shift a little bit. But these exact alignments will happen here late August 2025 at about 1 degree. And then we have an alignment around 4 degrees in summer of 2026. And then the final alignment happens near the 6 degree mark in 2027. And so I wanted to show you this visual so you could see what it looks like. And this is important because I talk about this quite a lot in my weekly videos, this idea of the Hermetic principle, as above, so below. And astrology to me is this representation of this Hermetic principle so thoroughly, and it to me it's the most obvious representation that we have of this Hermetic principle. And again, every week I'm looking at the moon phases, right? Here we are looking at this configuration of the outer planets and how it's going to be in this sort of ever-present alignment of this triangle for a pretty continuous couple of years here. And that will be influencing us here on Earth that entire time, right? The moon's alignments with the sun are how we get the moon phases, and they come into alignment for a few days and then they dissipate and then they build towards another alignment and then they dissipate. And this building and dissipating of a specific alignment with the moon and the sun, which is the resulting phase of the moon that we visually see in the sky, you know, again, we get those 4 phases and they build and dissipate about 1 a week, you know, so they're constantly in motion. But this particular alignment of this triangle that we have here on the page, again, it's going to sit in this alignment for about 2 years. And so this is just such a profound energy that we need to be aware of, and we need to be understanding of the fact that it's there, but also, you know, let's develop some awareness of what it means and how are we going to be feeling it down here on Earth, and what is it going to do, or what does it have the potential to do for all of us as we navigate our lives. Okay, so this is the visual. Now let's get back into what it means. And to get into what it means for us here on Earth, I'm going to go back to something I mentioned at the top of the show, that these are the 3 most outer planets, which is very different than talking about the moon, which is our closest celestial neighbor, who moves the most in the sky, right? Has the most to say to us. I talk about that every week. If you want to know more about that, go grab my free guide. It's called the Moon Phase Compass, and I talk to you about this monthly repeatable rhythm. I give you a guide to work with it. It never becomes irrelevant because you work with it every single month, and it's very foundational. It never goes away. You can find it at laurakusto.com/guide. Now, let's contrast though with what we're talking about this week, those 3 outer planets that take a really long time to go around the sun. And relative to us here on Earth, which is how astrology is built, they are moving very, very slowly up in the sky. So I want to give you just a very basic astrology lesson here. The planetary objects are grouped into 3 different groups. The personal planets, which include the sun and the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. They move quicker. And the reason we call them personal is because in an individual birth chart, they tend to be different for every single person. You can take 2 people even born 1 day apart. Well, the sun will move 1 degree in 1 day. Mercury will probably move a couple degrees. Venus, also a couple degrees. Mars will move a little bit slower. And the moon will the moon's going to be in a completely different sign. So that's what we mean by personal planets. They move quicker and their chart placements are different for every single person. And so they, in terms of energies above, Hermetic principle, right? Energies above, as above, so below. That's what helps form our individual charts and our individual beingness, okay? The second group of planets is just 2 planets. It's Jupiter and Saturn, and they're known as the social planets. And what they mean by that is for people born of the same age, either within the same year or the same few years, they have similar placements for these planets. Jupiter will go through one sign about once a year. So it'll spend its whole year in, say, one sign. This year, it's been in the sign of Cancer, just as an example. Saturn will take a few years to go through a sign. So example here, Saturn has been in Pisces since about 2023. And it is now finally starting to leave, and on into 2026, it'll be spending its time in Aries. And it'll be there for another few years. So those are the social planets for people of about your age socially, which you typically interact with, the people you socially interact with, especially when we're younger. You have similar placements for those planets. And then finally, we get into these three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Uranus spends about 6 years in a sign. Neptune, much longer, can be closer to 12. And Pluto can spend anywhere from 10 to 20 years in a sign. It just depends. It's got an elliptical orbit, so it doesn't spend the same amount of time in every single sign. But the point here is that you have to live 84 years to see Uranus go through all of the signs. And no human being lives long enough to see Neptune in all the signs or Pluto in all the signs. And so these planets are what we call transpersonal or generational, meaning their energies shape generations of people. And so setting that context now, let's bring it back to this rare planetary alignment, which some people are referring to as the magic triangle, or a minor grand trine would be another way of putting it. A grand trine is when we have three planets that sit all within the same element and they make a perfect equilateral triangle on an astrology chart. But this minor grand trine, we have two planets in the same element. Uranus and Pluto are both in air signs, and then we have Neptune in a fire sign. The planets also have these dualities, and fire and air go together just like earth and water do. If you think about it, fire and air both rise, and earth and water both fall, right? Gravity takes them down. And so that's the balance there. But again, back to these three planets, they move so slowly. To have them aligned at 1 degree of these harmonious signs, and then later in 2026, the summer of 2026, they will align again around 4 degrees. And then in the summer of 2027, they will align around 6 degrees of these respective signs. This is rare. This is not something you see every day. Astrologers, again, have not been able to pinpoint another time in history where we've had this. Not to say it hasn't happened. I'm sure it has, but it's been a very, very, very long time. And so, and again, they're collective planets. And so as above, so below, how are they influencing the collective? Okay. Next step here, let's dig into that. Let's talk about where they are, what these planets mean and represent, and then what the signs they are traveling in also represent, and then how is that energy playing out, okay? So I want to start first with a little bit on Pluto. Pluto is sitting in Aquarius. Aquarius is an air sign. Now, Pluto represents power and control. It represents what's deep and hidden in the shadows. It's also, and this is probably the bigger theme, transformation. Now, an astrologer that is really well known and has a great one-liner on Pluto and what it does is Rick Levine. And his one-liner is, Pluto, it cleans out the pipes. So as it's going through its signs, whatever sign it is in, it's going to take the theme of that sign, in this case it's Aquarius, and it's going to clean out the pipes. What that means is, let's look at Aquarius. So Aquarius represents the collective. It represents groups. It represents networks, people, how they gather together socially. But it's this cerebral thinking of the collective. And you think about themes around collective thinking. Earth Day is a good example. It's, let's take care of the earth. Let's take care of each other. It also oversees technology. So again, groups of people, how they connect. How do we connect with our friends and people around the world? Well, now Pluto acting in Aquarius, it's going to be looking at the shadow of those themes. It's going to be looking at what's deep and buried and hidden beneath. Its power and control around those themes. But ultimately, it's meant to clean out the pipes in terms of what is not right, what is not in integrity in those Aquarian themes. Okay, it's just at the beginning of Aquarius right now, 1 degree. We have a ways to go. but thankfully it's interacting with Neptune and Uranus, and it's going to get some help. All right, let's move on to Neptune sitting there in Aries. Aries, the fire sign. Neptune, what does Neptune represent? It's higher mind, it's spirituality, transcendentalism. It is also at lower vibrations, it represents escapism and addictions. But bottom line, Neptune is not in and of the body, it is in and of the spirit, okay? Aries is the sign that starts the zodiac. It represents the unique individual, the self, sovereignty. And so with Neptune and Aries, really, this is spiritual sovereignty. This is standing in your own truth. It is defining what spirituality means for you. And Neptune is also really the crux of this triangle, right? You've got Uranus and Pluto, which are 90 degrees from each other. That's that long line of the triangle. Well, Neptune makes a little bit of a shorter line to both of them. And it's really this like pivot point of the triangle. We're going to come back to this, but Neptune and that focus on the self. And we're sitting here and, all of us want to know, well, what's my role? How can I do this? Just the fact that Neptune is in the sign of the self, that's our clue. All right. Now let's talk about Uranus and Gemini. Uranus represents sudden breakthroughs, surprises, the unexpected. It is also the natural ruler of Aquarius. And so it oversees a lot of those things that Pluto is looking at and addressing, right? And so technology is also another big one with Uranus. Now, Gemini is also an air sign like Aquarius. But unlike all these collective themes that Aquarius is focused on, Gemini is more focused on the self and the immediate environment. And it oversees our thinking and our analysis and our communication. And so with Uranus going through Gemini, what we have now are sudden breakthroughs in how we think, sudden surprises and big transformations in how we analyze and how we communicate, right? You think about what's going on in our world right now with technology and especially with AI, how it enables us to connect to other people, right? Pluto connecting networks, groups, and this swiftness now of Uranus and Gemini, right? That's Uranus and Gemini is literally quick, sudden, unexpected changes and breakthroughs in how we think, communicate, and analyze. And it's working very harmoniously with Pluto there in Aquarius, okay? But then we have Neptune. We have Neptune sitting there again, right at that crux. Now, something else I want to mention is back to Saturn. Back when we looked at the chart, we looked at how Saturn is sitting there, right there with Neptune, right here at the beginning. Now, it's not going to sit there for all 2 years while these planets make these harmonious angles. It's really only there right now, right here at the end of 2025, and it'll sit there. It'll be in Aries with Neptune in early 2026. They'll have a conjunction right at the very beginning of Aries in February. Now, this is such a blessing for us. Again, Aries is the self. And with Neptune and Saturn sitting there right together, right at that beginning of Aries, again, they're farther out, but they're in the sign focused on the self, okay? So that's such an opportunity for everyone. If you want to take advantage of this and become conscious of it, you can, and you can work with it. Also, these angles that Neptune and Saturn are making with Pluto and Uranus, they're what we call sextiles. Harmonious angles, but they don't just naturally happen. They're not unconsciously interacting. They're opportunity type of energies. So again, to become conscious of them and take advantage of the opportunities that come your way is how to capitalize on this energy most. And so that Uranus-Pluto, they're 90 degrees apart, and they're making more of an unconscious connection of flow and harmony. They're going to do their dance in the collective no matter what. But if you as an individual want to capitalize all on this and to be a part of shaping the change and driving change in your own life, then become aware of these. Take this information and go forth and use it, right? Okay. So we have Neptune, higher mind, self-source sovereignty, sovereign spirituality. But Saturn is going to be there for just a bit here at the beginning of 2026. Now, Saturn is the planet that represents responsibility, structure, and foundation. And it's very thorough too. But it is there with Neptune. And really, it's this opportunity for you to stake your claim and really decide that you're going to go for this. You're going to become spiritually sovereign. You're going to step into it. You're done with the old ways, and you're going to step into the new and make the most of this. And you know that it comes with responsibility. It comes with accountability. It comes with work, right? Because it's change. But that's what you want to do. You want to be a part of shaping the future. You see the opportunity, you see all this harmony at play, and you want to be a part of it. You don't want to sit on the sidelines and get left behind. And so Saturn is there helping you do just that. Okay? So again, all these energies, we've got Pluto and Aquarius helping us transform systems, helping us look at collective power. We've got Uranus and Gemini giving us this innovation in how we communicate and how we think. And then we have Neptune and Saturn in Aries. Our spiritual sovereignty and our self-sourced beliefs, our self-sourced belief in ourself and what's possible and all that we can do to contribute to what is going on. Okay, so together, all of these planets form this rare harmony between evolution, Pluto, identity, right? Neptune and Aries, that's identity, and insight, okay? That's that Uranus and Gemini, how we think, how we communicate. And really, they're creating this new scaffolding, this new foundation and framework to bring us into a new chapter of human consciousness. It is absolutely amazing, okay? It's shaping how we can work together and how we show up through personal spiritual sovereignty. It's innovating our communication and how we think. And it's setting the stage for, say, thinking about spirituality different, for people taking radical responsibility for their spirituality and how they show up and how they contribute to the whole, how they voice their opinions, right? We've got Pluto and Aquarius and all this technology that we have going on, especially with Uranus and Gemini. We've got some choice points coming up here. Are we going to use this for the good of all, which is Pluto and Aquarius? Aquarius is for what's good of all. Or are we going to not be responsible, right? We're not doing our work here if we're not being responsible because we've got Neptune and Saturn sitting there in Aries, the self. They're helping us be responsible and use that higher mind and that spiritual sovereignty to step out and make better decisions. Are we going to do that? Or are we going to not be aware of this potential and these energies above, as above, so below? Are we going to not take this guidance and this opportunity to take on the responsibility? And we're going to let this opportunity go. And we're just going to sort of flutter and float and go with the flow and do what's easy and see where the powers that be take us. You know, all this technology, sure, it's making lives a lot easier, but is it easier good always? Is this what it means to be a human being? Okay, and I really want to focus here on this crux, right? Neptune in Aries is the crux of what is happening. I alluded to that before, right? It's Pluto and Uranus are interacting, and they're going to have that interaction no matter what. But it's Neptune and Aries. Aries focused on the self, making these angles of opportunity. They're not going to just happen. You're going to have to step into your sovereignty, stake your claim, and participate. And it's there to support you in doing something so, so beautiful and so profound and something that makes you feel so proud of how you live your life, okay? For so long, spirituality has meant surrender. Go with the flow, right? And if you're here listening and you know my message around spirituality and how your brain doesn't need to be your barrier, and you have felt that modern spirituality has really kind of cast you aside because it's just too open-ended, all right? Well, this Neptune and Aries time is for you, okay? Spirituality does not mean looking up and out anymore. It means coming down and into yourself. What works for you? What feels right for you? Neptune in Aries means that your spiritual path was never meant to look like anyone else's. And this is not the era of outsourcing our spiritual power anymore. It is now the era of insourcing your spiritual power. All right? You look at the history of spirituality, right? You know, you go back, the modern spiritual movement's been around for a while, right? But before that, we've had religion, and we still have religion. But you look at religion, it provided structure, which is what so many people need and crave. But it doesn't resonate with a lot of us. And that makes a lot of people who want that structure spiritually homeless, okay? But then now we've got the modern spiritual movement. It's go with the flow, just stay open. And that works for some people. Some people really like this open-ended exploration, but it doesn't work for everyone. Okay, so there has to be this middle ground. Strategic, analytical people who crave a framework. And that is not wrong. That is powerful. You know, and it's why I needed that too. And that's why the lunar cycle spoke to me so well. And that's why astrology speaks to me so well. Because here's the thing too, you know, we talk about the planets up there in certain signs and what does that mean? You could argue, I'm just going to just be real honest with you. You could argue like, well, who says that? Who says that that means that? That planet in that sign means whatever we want it to mean. I'll give you that. You could even throw that out the window. Here's what you can't argue with. The angles. The angles they are making are harmonious. They are exact and they are rare. All right, these 3 planets and 4 if you want to count Saturn right away. Those angles exist. They exist no matter what sort of system you want to plot them against. They exist. And the moon phases we experience every single month, same thing. They're exact and they exist. That's why we see the moon look the way that we do. That's why on the new moon, it's completely invisible. On the first quarter, why we see exactly the right-hand side. At the full moon, we see the whole moon. And on the last quarter, we see exactly the left-hand side. So that is something you cannot argue with. And it's been proven over the eons and eons that people have been studying the planets and assigning, yes, the meaning to them. But it's been proven that when you have 2 planets in an angle that is 90 degrees, you have tension. And when you have 2 planets in that 120 degrees, you have harmony. And that 120 is what Pluto and Uranus are doing right now. And exactly half of that, 60, is what Neptune is doing with each of them. Okay, so what are these planets asking of us to do over the next 3 years? It is not passive. They are asking us to, number 1, Pluto and Aquarius, embrace conscious community. Uranus and Gemini, upgrade how we think and how we speak. And Neptune and Aries, what brings it all together? Taking radical responsibility for how we show up, how we use these energies, and what we choose to do with them. All right, so let's frame that just another way. You're going to take radical responsibility. Let's start within. Upgrade how you think and speak. Okay, so now we're projecting out. And then finally, embracing your conscious community. What are you bringing to others? So, what does that look like in practice? What can you do? All right, here are 3 simple practices that you can do to start on this path. Let's actually say 4. Number 1, remember this video. Keep it handy. Perhaps rewatch it. Okay, but don't forget. Step 2, working with the lunar phases. Okay, every single month we get a period of rest. We get a period of moving things along in life. We get a period of celebrating and being present and just honoring the world around us. And then we get a period of reflection and harvesting. Okay? Those lunar phases, they guide us every single month. And unlike modern society, which wants to focus on just one phase, if you want to go with the flow with the modern world, you're going to be in pushing things along every single day of your life. Again, I talk about this every once in a while. That's really only meant to be 25% of our time. The third thing we can do is get to know your natal chart. Know what area of life the different planets and the moon especially is lighting up. Okay? I have 2 ways I can help you with that, by the way. I have a short course called Moon Map for $37 that you can go and buy, and it'll give you your map. It'll tell you what area of life is being activated when the moon or any planet is in that sign. So you will know, for example, what Aries oversees for you, right? Neptune and Aries. What does that really mean for you? What area of life is that extra focused on for you over these next 2 years? So again, that's Moon Map. It's at laurakusto.com/map. The other way I can help you with that is through my monthly membership called Moon Chat. It is a $19 membership where every moon phase, 2 days before every moon phase, I send you an email that's custom with what area of life is going to be activated for you on that specific moon phase. That's at laurakusto.com/membership. I'll put a link for all of this at the top of the show notes. So that's the second way you can work with this energy. Again, get to know your chart, get to know and become familiar with where the energies are being activated every single month. And finally, stop asking for permission. Again, back to Neptune and Aries. It's done looking out and up. It's time to come in and down and get in touch with how it feels. Again, we're not asking for permission. We're asking ourselves, does this feel right? It's about developing self-trust and making that a practice. Okay, it's not something that, you see other people who look so content and they're living these great lives. Well, guess what? It's a practice. They practice self-trust. They practice listening to themselves. They take the time to do it. Okay? So you don't need to be perfect. And you don't need to do it all at once. But you do need to listen to that deeper knowing that says it's time. And these next 2 years with these outer alignments, there's never been a better time. So I hope you join me on this wonderful journey. I'm so excited to see where we go. And I hope to see you on the next episode as well. With that, as always, take care.